Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating trend that's connecting the world of medicine with the world of publishing. And it turns out it reveals something pretty profound about what we're all looking for in a good story, and maybe even how we heal.
It's a great question, right? I mean, for years, the bestseller lists were always packed with celebrities, politicians, you know the drill. But lately, a totally new kind of author has been quietly taking over. So, what's the deal with that?
Okay, to really get a handle on this, you first have to see just how big of a deal this is. We're not just talking about a couple of surprise hits. This is a massive shift in what we all want to read.
So, let me introduce you to Christy Watson. After spending 20 years as a pediatric nurse, she decided to write a book about it. But she was really skeptical. She thought, her world of hospital wards, of life and death moments, that it was too, I don't know, too ordinary for anyone else to care about. Well, she could not have been more wrong.
Get this. That's how many copies her book, The Language of Kindness, sold in just a few weeks. 100,000. This wasn't just a nice little success story. This was a genuine blockbuster. It proved that people weren't just interested, they were absolutely starving for these stories. And Christie's book wasn't a fluke. Not at all. It's part of this huge wave. Just look at the UK, for example. Memoir sales surged by a whopping 42% in a single year, hitting 2.5 million copies sold. This isn't just a blip on the radar, it's a cultural earthquake. And this trend goes way beyond nursing. We're seeing doctors like Adam Kay, former soldiers like Aunt Middleton, teachers, even prison officers. All of them are hitting the top of the charts. These are everyday people with incredibly demanding jobs, and their stories about doing pretty extraordinary things are clearly hitting a nerve. Okay, so that's the what. We're seeing this publishing boom. But the real question, the much more interesting question, is why? What's driving us as readers to seek out these specific stories right now? This right here, this really gets to the heart of it. For so long, we were fed this steady diet of celebrity memoirs, right? All about their perfect, curated lives on Instagram, yachts, and drama that felt like it was from another planet. Now, it seems like we're craving the exact opposite. We want raw honesty. We want to read about real people we feel like we can trust, people dealing with actual life and death stakes, not just another manufactured crisis.
And ultimately, it's not just about being entertained. As publishing director Helen Garnones-Williams puts it, it's a direct reaction to our complex, often chaotic world. In an age of so much uncertainty, we're searching for something authentic, something inspiring. We want to connect with ordinary heroes. This hunger for real stories definitely explains why we're all buying these books. But it doesn't really explain why the authors are so compelled to write them in the first place. Is there something else going on here? Something deeper than just sharing a cool story? And this is where the whole thing gets really interesting. Because it turns out that for these professionals, writing isn't just about communicating. It's actually an act of healing. And yeah, there's some pretty powerful science that backs this up. So the key idea here comes from the work of a researcher named Dr. James Pennebaker. He discovered that when we write about stressful or even traumatic events, we're not just venting. We're actually creating what he calls a cohesive personal narrative. Basically, we're building a story that connects what happened with how we felt about it. And by doing that, we start to gain a sense of order and, importantly, control over those experiences. And get this. This isn't just some psychological trick to make you feel better. Pennebaker's research found real, measurable health benefits. People who did this kind of expressive writing actually had lower blood pressure, better immune function, and even went to the doctor less often. The simple act of putting their story onto paper was making them physically healthier. It's incredible. So, you've got this incredibly powerful tool for personal healing. What's the next logical step? Well, it's to start formally integrating it into the practice of medicine itself, not just for the writers, but for everyone involved in healthcare. And this has given rise to a whole field called narrative medicine. It's a formal approach that basically recognizes that stories, from both the patient and the doctor, they aren't just background noise. They are essential pieces of data, absolutely crucial for diagnosis, for treatment, and for hearing. So to put this into practice, clinicians are now being trained in something called narrative competence. It breaks down into a few key steps. First, they have to really acknowledge and absorb the patient's story. Then they interpret the deeper meaning of what's being shared. And finally, and most importantly, they act on that understanding to provide better, more empathetic care. And this really gets to the core of it. It completely transforms the medical appointment.
Instead of a doctor just taking a history, running down a checklist of symptoms, they are building a story with the patient. They create a shared history, a bridge of understanding that connects the clinical facts to what the patient is actually living through. And what's so important to remember is that this isn't just for the patient. Think about the doctors, the nurses, all the clinicians who face immense stress and burnout. Narrative medicine is a powerful tool for them too. Studies show it helps reduce that burnout, it preserves the empathy that got them into medicine in the first place, and it helps them stay connected and resilient in a really tough job. So all of this, the best-selling books, the science of writing, this new practice of narrative medicine, it all leads us to one final and, I think, crucial point. Who really owns the story of an illness? For more than 100 years, medicine pretty much ran on a model where the doctor was the all-knowing expert. But we are right in the middle of this massive cultural shift toward a patient-centered model. This new model recognizes that, yeah, a doctor is an expert on disease, but the patient is the world's leading expert on their own life, their values, and their experiences. This brings us to this really beautiful concept called narrative humility. It's this understanding that the doctor is like a co-author, maybe a guide or a trusted interpreter, but they are never the sole author of the story. The patient is the one who ultimately holds the pen. They own their story and they own their choices. Which brings us right back to where we started. Whether we're talking about a best-selling book or a quiet conversation in a doctor's office, stories clearly have this immense power to connect us and to heal us. But it all seems to rest on this one simple yet really profound question. It forces us to think about who gets to tell the story, whose voice truly gets heard, and who, in the end, gets to write the ending.